Welcome, Gallifreyans, robots, human-looking aliens, military personnel, people from the past, a few from the future, and at least one entire street of London at this point, to the start of Season 21 and episode 526 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 2nd of November, or the 3rd for me, 2024. And this time we'll be doing a tier list of the classic era companions. I am your host for the evening, Alex Fireheart, and joining me are Bill Sylvia, the one in black.
All right, a week before our first podcast, I'm going to make the new opening, and oh shoot, I time traveled too far. It's already the new podcast.
And handling streaming duties for us is Aaron Romeo Moon Burke.
Hello.
Okay, so we have been MIA for longer than intended. A lot of scheduling issues kind of occurred, so we ended up taking off 5 weeks instead of what would have otherwise been possibly 3, as far as the gap between. So technically we took off a total of 6. We would have taken off a total of 4 as far as gaps between. But in any case. So how have you all been in the interim?
I have not, like, I'm not going to say haven't noticed any time has passed, but like, I've actually really appreciated having that extra 2 hours of sleep on Saturdays. Just because, like, that's how busy I've been. Mostly just the fact that I'm teaching a new course this semester, so I've had to make 2 exams since our last podcast. And every time, like, even if I know exactly what questions I want to ask, the process of writing them up and inputting them into the system generally makes it an all-nighter.
Yeah.
So yeah. But we're getting toward the slightly less work part of the semester now. So Tuesday is election day. All of my classes have canceled, including the one I'm teaching. Of course, Thanksgiving break is coming up soon, so there's a lot more breathing room for things. Also, since I watched the Adventure Time spin-offs, and I've binged all 3 and an spin-off season of the Mandalorian. So I'm making tiny bits of headway on my 2-watch pile.
I have been doing the same, as I have I've set the goal of watching all of the Dragon Ball series. So I've finished the original Dragon Ball. Highly enjoyed it. Really filled in a lot of the gaps that, because I, like everybody else, started watching Dragon Ball Z when we were kids. And this was back in syndication when they had the original voice cast, other than the Funimation voice cast. So yeah, it was I'm glad I did it.
I would say at this point, at least every American of our generations, because definitely there are younger people or people in countries that got it later that are like, why did you skip Dragon Ball? We didn't have a choice.
Yeah, we didn't have a choice. Dragon Ball Z aired before Dragon Ball did. So yeah, and I can't tell if this version, because I'm onto Dragon Ball Z now on Funimation. I'm watching the full-length version of it, not Kai. If I have time, I'll watch Kai, after I watch GT, which will be after I watch Super. So, yeah, I can't tell if these, because they're definitely using Chris Sabat as the narrator. The voice of Krillin is the narrator for these episodes, so...
Oh, you're saying they're using Krillin's... Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's...
Are you saying in the Krillin voice, he's doing the narration?
He sounds like Krillin, yeah, I mean...
Okay.
Not like the super silly voice, but you can tell it's the same voice actor. So, but yeah, it's not the usual narrator, who actually just recently passed away too. So.
Yep. Yes, he did.
And I don't know if they've kept the original syndicated voices, or if they went back and if this is like a redub.
So if you're watching it on Funimation, they did do a redub. Like, they finished the series and then they went back and redubbed everything that the Ocean dub had done.
Okay, yes.
So it would
So,
all be so in theory, it should all be the same voice actor all the way from Saiyan Saga through Boo now.
well, it's kind of weird though
Hmm.
that they would use Chris Sabat as the narrator and not like the actual narrator because they used him for Dragon
True.
Ball. So it's kind of weird. So I can't tell if this is I don't think it's the Ocean dub
Hmm.
because the voices sound familiar. It's just some
Hmm.
changes that were made that are kind of strange. So
Hmm.
yeah, well, we'll see.
Maybe that actor was busy the month that they did the recording or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see Chris Sabat listed as voicing Krillin.
I thought he voiced
Um.
Krillin. Oh, he definitely voices Krillin. I thought. Hmm.
Hmm.
This
I
is
see
puzzling
Yamcha,
me.
Piccolo, and Vegeta, and Shenron,
I mean, to be fair,
but
there's at
no
least 100
Krillin.
voices he does, but when I look up
Hmm.
Krillin, the Funimation actor for Krillin was Sonny Strait.
Oh no, not Yeah,
Unless you
so
might be mixing up with Abridged, where Krillin was the same actor as Vegeta
hmm.
and Piccolo.
Yeah, because Chris Sabat I think is listed as the narrator in this. Huh. I think he's the narrator in right now in Dragon Ball, but like, or in the Dragon Ball Z that I'm watching, because it sounds just like Krillin's voice.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. I don't know. It's really weird. So I'll have to double check that. Maybe I misread the name on it. Maybe it was what was the
Sonny Strait.
Sunny. Yeah, because I'm friends with Sunny Straight on Facebook. Huh. All right. Anyway, I could have sworn maybe I'm just getting it confused. Maybe my ears, maybe it's my hearing. I'm old. That's
Hmm.
my excuse. So, but yeah, that's been an interesting journey.
Hmm.
And one that all three of us have gone on in the past several years.
Yeah, really, this all started
Hmm.
with me having an excuse to watch Dragon Ball Super. But I never
Hmm.
finished the Boo
Yeah.
saga. And I'm like, oh man, I gotta go back and rewatch the Boo saga, which means I should probably watch the Great Sandman saga. Which means why don't I
Hmm.
just rewatch Dragon Ball Z? And while I'm at it, why don't I just watch Dragon Ball? So that's how
Right.
all of this began. So
Hmm.
How about you, Alex? What have you been up to?
Well, um, a whole lot of. Oh, whoops! I meant to watch Doctor Who stuff for this, and then ended up watching like a good 20 something probably episodes of Critical Role instead.
Hmm.
um, and right near the end of the month, um, I finally had my first appointment to start the process of getting a diagnosis as either being autistic, having ADHD, or possibly both. So far the verdict is most likely.
Hmm.
Which helps a lot that like um when we went in there it was like, is there a family history of it? And my dad's just rattling off like about 10 to 15 people in my
Right.
family that have one or the other. So it's like, yeah, my family history does seem to have a lot of neurodivergency in it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just imagining if I go in there, be like family history, and I'm like, yeah, my mom was definitely undiagnosed ADHD, and I'm pretty sure my dad is undiagnosed autistic, and I don't know if you're going to care about either of them because they're not diagnosed.
um, but yeah, like, and it's funny because like as much as I was fretting over money for that, I actually came out of it with plenty left because I think I had like as much saved as I could just in case we went longer. But the initial appointment was only an hour. Um, I was wondering how long it would be until the next one, but it seems that now that I've seen this guy once, uh, because I would now be a returning patient, the turnaround was way quicker. Like
Very
I will
nice.
when I booked the second appointment, which I'm realizing in hindsight, I was probably meant to get the blood work done and then book a second appointment. But I wasn't sure how long the gap would be between. So if I don't manage to get the blood work he wants to get me to get done in between, then I might have to push that back. But now at least I know that will be a fairly quick turnaround. That aside, not much really. So with that all done, on tonight's show, we will be having doing birthdays and news, trying to get through both of them fairly quickly, given how many companions we've got to rank. And then moving on to the tier list. So, moving on to birthdays first, which, for the record, yes, we're not doing literally every birthday. We were gone for 5 weeks. Sue me.
I think there were 35 before I started paring down the list.
Yeah. So yeah, starting on seemingly the day
Oh crap.
disappear.
That part was okay, so that's a problem in my spreadsheet. That's something I definitely could have done correctly, but did not notice I screwed up.
Uh-oh.
When I checked yesterday, there were days, but
I see, because they were on two different columns. Okay, the fastest way then is just going to be for me to read off, because I have everything in front of me, rather than trying to do it all over again while you sit here and wait for me. All right. So don't delete them though. I'll use that to get the right names.
Yeah.
Okay. So September 22 was the birthday of Billie Piper, who played Rose Tyler from 05 to 09, as well as the Moment in Day of the Doctor, and has done work for Big Finish. She turned 42. Also on the 22nd of September, Fraser Hines, who played Jamie McCrimmon from 66 to 69, and in 83 and in 85, plus work for Big Finish, turned 80. So official, we've hit that good run territory. All right. On October 11, Nicola Bryant, who played Perry Brown or Perpigillium Brown from 84 to 86, plus work for Big Finish, turned 64. On October 14, Katie Manning, who played Jo Jones from 71 to 73, and in 2010, plus work for Big Finish, turned 78. And wow, 2010 feels like it should not be that long ago, but it's wow. On October 15, Ncuti Gatwa, who has been the current Doctor since 22, turned 32. On October 20, Anna K. Wills, who played Polly Wright from 66 to 67, plus work for Big Finish, turned 83. Where is he? I think I scrolled past his name. On October 22, Sir Derek Jacobi. He makes the list because he counts as a companion. Played the Master in Scream of the Shalka and Utopia, plus work for Big Finish, turned 86. On October 28, Matt Smith, who played the Doctor from 010 to 013, turned 45. On October 28, Ian Martyr, who played Harry Sullivan from 74 to 75, and was the writer of many Doctor Who novelizations, would have hit his good run, would have turned 80, but he died in 86 at the age of 42. And then on October 29, Nina Toussaint White, if that's how you pronounce it, who played Mel's, aka River Song, in Let's Kill Hitler, plus work for Big Finish, turned 39. So that is all of our birthdays. Um, I'll figure out where that typo is later. Moving on to Lost Stories. We do have one, unfortunately. Ernie Vinkze, possibly pronounced Vinze, who is the Doctor Who director of photography from 2005 to 2009, has died at the age of 81. Vinkze was solely in charge of lighting and camera work for Series 1 and shared the responsibility until Waters of Mars. Throughout his career, Vinkze earned over 80 credits, including Jeeves and Wooster, Holby City, Robin Hood, Macbeth, Screen 2 on the South Bank Show, and won a BAFTA in 2008 for Voyage of the Damned. So no other information is provided, so we can probably assume natural causes related to aging. Rest in peace. Moving on to our episode news. Our first bit, now that we've entered November, eyes turn to Doctor Who's annual special as part of BBC's Children in Need fundraiser. Cultbox reports that this year's special has been announced, and it is a preview of Christmas special Joy to the World, which we're not going to spend a lot of time on commentary, but I do miss the days when Doctor Who just made a brand new sketch for the Children in Need special. Just saying. Moving on, Deadline reports that their sources have indicated that Archie Punjabi, best known as Kalinda Sharma in The Good Wife, and known from roles such as Bend It Like Beckham, East is East, A Mighty Heart, and San Andreas, is expected to play a villain at some point in Season 2 of Doctor Who, so that's the 2025 series. Cultbox notes that companion actors Millie Gibson and Verada Sethu follow Punjabi on Instagram, but there is no other public evidence of this casting. Moving on, several months after Russell T Davies previously indicated that the official order for a third season probably wouldn't come up until Season 2 airs in 2025, Ncuti Gatwa has now stated in an October episode of The Graham Norton Show that a third series is being filmed next year, and I'm glad I'm the one reading this because I wrote week instead of year. It's possible that he is simply assuming the show will be greenlit mid-year and production will then begin immediately, or this may be an indication that the timeline has moved up from RTD's estimate. Cultbox estimates that if Season 3 begins filming in mid-2025, the earliest it could air based on Season 1's turnaround would be spring 2027. Moving on to spin-off news, producer Phil Collinson has announced several actors for The War Between the Land and the Sea, which is currently filming. First is Patrick Baladi, who played Neil Godwin in BBC's The Office. Then Vincent Franklin, who played Christopher Rawson in the BBC HBO series Gentleman Jack. Adrian Lucas, who played George Wickham in the 1995 BBC version of Pride and Prejudice. Francesca Corney of Apple TV's The Buccaneers. And Mae Mack of Call the Midwife, and who played Juliet next to Ncuti Gatwa's Romeo at the King's coronation concert. First off, I'm side-eyeing Cultbox a little bit for the fact that the male actors get their character names mentioned and the female actors just get the name of the show. I don't know if they played more minor characters, but just at face value, that earns a little side-eye. Any of you know these actors well and have any quick comments you'd want to make?
Don't think I'm familiar with any of them.
I
It's not
did
off the top of my head.
Yeah, I did watch all of The Office, and he looks a little familiar, but
The BBC version?
yeah, the BBC version. Like I've not seen the American version of The Office, at least not a good chunk of it or anything.
You're one of the probably dozens or fewer of Americans who can say they've seen the BBC version but not the American version.
I kind of like the dry I like the dry comedy of the BBC version.
Yeah.
Like the American version just looked kind of slapsticky and goofy, and I was just like, eh.
But you were saying you don't remember Neil Godwin well,
I don't
or
really remember him all that well.
okay. Moving on to new releases. Penguin Books has announced a new series by the name of Doctor Who Icons, in which the Doctor encounters legendary figures from Earth's past. There are four announced so far, two of them with full titles and authors. The first is Frida Kahlo and the Skull Children, written by Sophie Mackenzie and featuring the Mexican surrealist painter, alongside the 13th Doctor. This was released on October 24th. The second is Charles Darwin and the Silurian Survival, written by L.D. Lipinski, and featuring the Father of Evolution, alongside the 10th or possibly the 14th Doctor, which will be released on November 21st. Book 3 will feature the 15th Doctor alongside child actor Shirley Temple, and is scheduled for release on May 29. And Book 4 will feature the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith alongside Nigerian musician Fela Kuti, and is scheduled for release on July 31. For Big Finish, we're not going through all of the releases in a month and a half, but I do want to note at least that the 4 Doctors is now available to all or at least users of the Big Finish app, which, based on where it was announced, seems to be an apology for the technical difficulties experienced earlier this year. So I'm going to probably download that, and who knows when I'll have time to listen to it. But and that is the end of our news.
And because of how long this tier list may potentially take, we are skipping Geek Talk this week. So that moves us right on to the tier list. And I have gone through myself and written a bunch of summaries for the histories of each. It's going to be very bare minimum, so don't expect me to go into the character history of a lot of people. We've got 30-something characters, I think, to get through. So it's going to be very dot point kind of thing in terms of what info I'll actually bother to say. So starting with the first Doctor companions, so starting with the first Doctor era, the first companions of the show were Susan Foreman, played by Caroline Ford, Barbara Wright, played by Jacqueline Hill, and Ian Chesterton, played by William Russell, all appearing in the debut serial An Unearthly Child. Susan was the first to leave after 10 stories, exiting in the Dalek invasion of Earth, with her spot on the TARDIS being filled almost immediately after by Vicky, who was played by Maureen O'Brien, who debuted in The Rescue and travelled alongside Ian and Barbara until they left after 16 stories in The Chase, with the Doctor and Vicky being joined in the TARDIS by Stephen Taylor, played by Peter Purves, who technically debuted in The Chase but wasn't confirmed as a companion until the following story, The Time Meddler. After 8 stories, Vicky exited in The Mythmakers, being briefly replaced by Katerina, played by Adrian Hill, who debuted in that same story and died during the events of the following story, The Daleks' Master Plan. Also, Sarah Kingdom, played by Jean Marsh, exists and was solely in The Daleks' Master Plan, as she was also killed off. Following that...
Also the one that you skipped, who has the very same description. He's the most controversial one of the first Doctor list, I think.
Following that, Dodo Chaplet, played by Jackie Lane, joined the TARDIS in The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, although technically her full first story being The Ark, which came directly after that. With Stephen finally leaving the TARDIS after 9 stories in The Savages, Dodo eventually left unceremoniously in her 5th and final story, The War Machines, which also introduced Ben Jackson, played by Michael Craze, and Polly, played by Anarchy Wills, who were the final 2 companions for the first Doctor, who continued through into the second Doctor era, eventually both leaving the TARDIS after 8 stories in The Faceless Ones. So now we will go through and cover all of those folks. So starting with Susan Foreman. Susan, for me, is a bit hard to place because it feels like she should be placed higher than I put her personally. But at the same time, I feel like they really dropped the ball with her of what I've seen. So I'm probably going to be a bit controversial. I put her in B. So
So,
Bill, where are
yeah.
you?
So for me, I'll just say the first three companions all together.
Hmm.
They're all like, as a TARDIS crew, they're all solid. They all did good work in establishing the show. They all had something unique to offer, both as characters and as templates for future companions. But none of them are like, I have three characters in my S tier, and they're not these three. But I do think they're worthy of A tier.
Aaron?
I was just looking at my tier list and I'm missing like half the images here, like half the companions. Like I don't have Ian or Barbara on here.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, not good.
did
But
you delete it? I don't know if you can
I
delete,
didn't. I
but
didn't
yeah, that's
because this is the list I saved too, and I put it all
huh.
together pretty quickly. Oh well, yeah, because I don't have. Wow, I don't have most of the classic on here. I don't know where they went, so I'm just gonna have to
And
wing it with
did you
them.
use this link, or did you just search for it?
I use this link, yeah,
That is really weird. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
So,
I mean, looking at what you're sharing on the stream, it seems to have all of them.
oh, this is the blank
Right.
one. This is actually the blank one from
Ah,
Google.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
This is not the one that I have. So let me see here. I can probably don't open stupid. Um, close that. Let's see here. I can probably swap it to Opera here. This is what I have right now. So it's a very small list. It's missing. I don't know where. I didn't even realize it until I just looked at it now. I'm like, wait a
Oh
second.
wow.
There's like most of these people are gone. I don't know where the rest of them went.
Hmm.
Like, I didn't delete anything.
Huh.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's weird. And then we got this here. I don't know where they went.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Or why.
that is weird.
Yeah.
I mean, is
Oh,
there a
here
way
they are.
to?
Oh, I'll just. I found it. I found it. I'll just slapdash this stuff together here while we're talking. Um, Let me bring us back over to the blank one. It's not the end of the world, so there we go. Okay, so let me just place Ian and Barbara up here. Honestly, all right. Are we talking about all three of them, or are we talking about just Susan right now?
I talked about all three, but we're only technically doing Susan so far,
All
unless you
right.
talk about all three at once.
I'm gonna let. I'll just go with Susan. I'm just gonna place her at C. It feels like she should be higher because she's the first. She's
Hmm.
she's the big deal, and like, but they didn't really build on her character all that much. She was her best episode, I think, was an Unearthly Child, in my opinion, when she's introduced, because she's like, that's where she's like showing off her intelligence. Um, yeah, I don't know. They didn't really do much with her, so for her she's kind of C for me.
Hmm. So with an A, a B, and a C, I'd say that averages out to a B.
Yep. Yeah, I personally think you're all underestimating the amount of the role she had in developing the Doctor himself.
Hmm.
Um, but
Hmm.
we're not here to
Yeah,
debate,
like
so I'm not in
yeah.
no convincing going on.
Hmm.
I mean, I feel like for me personally, it's one of those. I would have been fine with her ending up higher, but I'm also like, they kind of did her dirty by relegating her to the screaming child. So,
Hmm. Although, unlike some people in that role, at least she is a minor.
right.
Um, You want to talk about Ian and Barbara separately or together?
I feel like we have to talk about them together because they're so intrinsically like there are a couple
Mhm.
here where I'm gonna make us kind of rank them at the same time because they just you can't really separate them. For me, I basically I did put Susan, Ian, and Barbara all on B. Um, I could see Ian and Barbara like maybe going slightly up, but I basically just put them all on B because like I don't know, it's like they're missing just that like for like historical importance, they I probably should be putting them higher, but looking at it objectively, from at least from my subjective opinion, it's like for whatever reason I just could not justify putting them above B. I mean, they are iconic. I do love them, but considering who they're up against, I think is part of it as well. I could not, in my own mind anyway, justify putting them above B.
Yeah,
So,
I
Bill?
relegated all three of them to C.
Mm.
Honestly,
Okay.
like they're the first. They're not the worst, but like yeah. I just they're just early companions, and I feel like a lot of the early companions just didn't get a lot of development, in my opinion. Like especially a lot of the women seem to be relegated to kind of screaming a lot, like the damsel in distress or the screaming child, or yeah.
So I
So I
guess that's
think
the
that,
exact same. That's all three of them are A,
yeah.
B, and C, averaging out to a B.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so all three of them are B.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, let's throw these guys up there. Okay. I got my tier list worked out for the most part.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So moving on from those three, we go to Vicky, who, let's see, pull mine up again. Um, Seemingly I'd put Vicky on the same as the first three. I also put her on B. I think in her case, it's mainly because I have not seen a lot of Vicky, and I didn't end up getting around to seeing much else of what she'd done. So it was like going by what I had seen her in. I didn't have a shit ton to work with, and basically she was filling the Susan role, but now she doesn't necessarily have the the intelligence level of it. She's not supposed to be like brainless either, but she basically is just a replacement Susan to fit the screaming child mold. But at the same
Um.
time, I
mhm,
also don't hate her or anything, so
Right.
I feel like she's B worthy.
I mean, I also put her alongside the first three. Of course, for me that was A. She's kind of the transition from Susan to Zoe. And she's the she has the intelligence of being like she's from the same time period as Steven, I think, or at least in some way like distant Earth future
Mm.
during spacefaring time.
Yeah.
But she's also like she plays the child role in a way that we don't really see otherwise. Like she is so much the teenager, more so even than I think than Susan. Um, and that's kind of important to, again, also because of the role, the effect that it has on the doctor. Like you have this, the doctor is saying, okay, she's like my granddaughter. She's like a granddaughter to me, but she's not actually my granddaughter. And that,
Mm.
considering the doctor is still kind of transitioning into the character we know, I think that has a big role on him. So yeah, she is in the A tier for me.
Okay. For me, she's actually above the main three. I put her in B because I kind of felt that she brought a lot of heart to the role that I felt was kind of missing from Susan. A little bit more characterization. She comforts the doctor when Ian and Barbara left. Like I watched the serial where she is first introduced, or when they leave. Yeah, she comforts the doctor. She has kind of the childish bickering with Barbara over the killing of the animal when in her introductory story. And Barbara shoots the animal she's caring for and doesn't realize that it's kind of a somewhat tamed wild animal and wasn't necessarily going to harm her.
Mm-hmm.
And so Vicky herself has to go through Vicky and Barbara have to go through a bit of development there. Vicky has to learn to forgive Barbara, and Barbara has to, understand that, Vicky's just kind of a young girl who's immature and, is going to be kind of emotional. Well, not kind of, but is very emotional about losing, kind of something that she's bonded with in this terrible situation.
If pop
Hmm.
culture if pop culture is at all honest about British schooling, I imagine that the concept of apologizing to a teenager was not part of her training.
Like, well, and Barbara had to sit there and kind of coax Vicky into understanding that it was all just a big mistake and everything. So I found that very poignant. I thought that was very well done. I
Hmm.
didn't see I like Alex, I have not seen enough of Vicky. I believe I watched her in the Time Meddler as well. So yeah, because that was where after Ian and Barbara left, where she's comforting the doctor, which I also thought was very kind of cool and emotionally. It made me emotionally attached to the character a little bit more. She's that kind of emptiness you feel when like a character in a show dies and they bring in a new person, and that either that new person is going to click with you or you're going to hate them. And this one really clicked
Hmm.
with me. It was kind of a bonding thing, I guess. Kind of weird, but
Hmm.
yeah. Okay. That's mine.
So, so
That was A, B,
two,
B.
yeah.
ABC?
So like
So
I guess
yeah,
it would be
oh,
B, but higher than the others.
yeah, it'd be a high B, I'd say.
All right, probably to the left of Susan.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
either that or we have
Uh,
to eventually start adding in B plus categories, but hopefully we don't get to that.
mm. So after Vicky, we get Stephen Taylor. Let's see, where did I put Stephen? For Stephen, I went with a C, but like partly that's not seeing much, and in some cases he's just saddled with some, he's in my l- most hated classic era story ever, which is not his fault.
Oh,
But
he's
he's in
not
the
the one
gunfighters,
singing.
and well, he does sing. He does sing at one point. Him and Dodo are forced to. But yeah, like I haven't seen a crap ton of Steven. Not that he's really around for an extraordinarily long time. And to be fair, a lot of his stories are like partially or fully missing.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, he's around like several companions come and go while he's still there, I
mm,
think.
mm, to be fair, some of them leave very quickly, which we're
Right. Like
about to
he
get to.
leaves at
But
the same time. He leaves right before Dodo, and we have so many
mm,
people before Dodo.
yeah, and yeah, like with him, it's just like he feels very generic, like happy-go-lucky dude. So like I don't hate him, which is why it's not lower than C. But he's just also, for the most part, just kind of there. So Bill.
I kind of agree with that. So while Vicky kind of compares favorably with Susan as, very similar or even possibly better, Steven is the new Ian, and he doesn't have Ian's charisma, I think. He doesn't have as many. I don't think the writing for him is as interesting. He's mostly just kind
Mm,
of there. Sometimes like he has something to say, but it's mostly like he doesn't have that sort of standout identity the way a lot of companions do. He's mostly just either
mm,
just there to be a companion, and then he's there to be the senior companion who mentors the less experienced one,
Mm,
but not in an
yeah.
interesting way. Like referring to him as like a mentor companion makes him sound a lot better written than he actually is.
Right. Like
So yeah, that's
he,
a C for me.
yeah, like he's effectively just the young man who can do the actiony stuff that Hartnell can't.
Right.
So Aaron?
Um, I have him as C, mostly like he's kind of mostly there to be the brawn for the Doctor. Like he's the
Mm,
tough guy. He's also kind of mistrustful. I think in the Time Meddler, I believe he's in the Time Meddler along with Vicky, and he's kind of mistrustful of a few things, like a lot of stuff. And I think there's a comment that he makes that is kind of like a reference to his time in prison, because like that's when they meet him. Was he's a prisoner? I thought, and
mm.
Oh
he
yeah,
was.
prisoner of either the Daleks or the Mechanoids, right?
Yeah, because like
One of the
he
two, yeah.
mentions he makes like some comment. I can't remember exactly what it was. He mentions something about being in a cell or how uncomfortable he is to be in a cell, and I think it's because he's investigating the cell that, or he enters the cell that the Doctor was in through the back passage in the abbey or the monastery, because there's that secret passage that they have to crawl through.
Mm,
And yeah, and he's like, oh no, not another cell or something like that. So that was kind of an interesting callback, but he doesn't really get a lot of development either. So he's really
mm,
just there to be the big brother, the tough guy for the Doctor, and to kind of comfort the ladies and stuff when something horrible happens.
mm,
So he is kind of happy-go-lucky too, and that kind of brightens things up a bit too. So
mm.
yeah, so he was a C for me.
Yep. So that's
That's
C's
three
across the
C's.
board. So
Yep.
Yeah.
uh so moving on from that, we go to the uh ill-fated Katerina, who literally existed for technically less than a full story, I think. I don't know if she was in the entirety of the Myth Makers, but I feel like she was in.
I think she was like I'm not even sure she was in like the length of 2 full episodes.
I feel like I feel like I remember it being that she was in like 2 episodes of the Myth Makers and then maybe 2 episodes of Daleks' Master Plan. So she
Okay.
was only in 4 episodes total across 2 stories. I Funnily enough, while I have not seen the Daleks' Master Plan or the Myth Makers, I actually put her in C, and that is mainly because she dies. Like, she is the first companion to die. It would feel really weird putting her any lower than at least a C, having not seen her. Like, if I had, maybe, like, based on how much I like the characterization, she might have gone possibly up. But it feels weird to not have the first. Like, it would feel wrong to have the first companion to die lower than a C. Bill?
Okay. So I put her in doesn't count. She died not understanding that she was in a time machine. She snuck into the TARDIS, if I remember correctly. She thought the Doctor was a wizard. I think she thought Brett was a wizard. I think and forgive me, it's been a while since I've watched the Daleks Master Plan. I think she died like messing
Dies.
with the TARDIS controls or something.
No, she's
No?
fighting. I believe was it a Cyberman or something? Sneaks on board the TARDIS, and she gets locked outside in space with it. Or no, she doesn't play with the controls. Like there's some enemy on board and like pulls her out into space, or she gets sucked out into space, basically.
Hmm.
Mm.
Okay,
So.
because I remembered that like she didn't understand she was in a time machine and that there was
Mm-hmm.
entirely the possibility she would try to open the door and there would not
Mm.
be space there. But
Yeah.
yeah, for all of that and the fact that like she comes in at the end of one story, dies at the beginning of another. We don't know her personality. All of that to me says doesn't count.
Like I think the argument is she's usually an officially recognized by the BBC companion is usually what people go with, and that she's in one story, travels on the TARDIS, and then is in the next one. And also, the fact that I think a lot of people count the fact that she was intended to be a long-term, well, longer than she lasted companion, and then the writers immediately realized, oh no, she's from ancient Greece.
Yeah, she doesn't
She's
even
gonna
know
think
what
the
a lock
doctors are.
does.
Yeah, she's like, this is gonna be too hard to write for. Whoops. Oh well, I guess we've got to kill her now.
That's why that's why we've only gotten 2 pre-modern companions since then. All right. So Aaron, so what was it? C or doesn't count? Where do you
D.
fall, or
I
neither of
put her
them?
in D. It's just like, oh my
Okay.
god. Yeah. So I'm trying to look up her death right now. Let me see here. Check to see. All right, the spar took off. This is reading off of the TARDIS wiki. The spar took off for Earth. The spar being a freaking a ship. Took off for Earth, and Katerina checked to see if the door was secure. Upon which Kirkson emerged and held her hostage. So there is like a villain who holds her hostage, pulling her to an airlock to blackmail the doctor into returning the ship to Kemble. To save her friends and enable them to stop the Daleks, she deliberately activated the airlock door and expelled herself and Kirkson into space. As she fell through space, struggling to breathe, she thought of how the gods liked sacrifices before dying, and that was actually something
So that's okay. So that's
skipping song.
That's the part that I thought was the TARDIS, because my understanding watching that scene was that she didn't understand what would happen, and just understood it like opening a door. So I don't know if deliberately jettisoning herself into space is the accurate reading. I'd have to rewatch it.
Yeah, it could be that someone took liberties with it, but I felt that she was so underdeveloped. She could have been a very interesting companion. We've had people from earlier times, be effective companions, but also I don't know, maybe she was probably just too hard to write for. Like I said, one of the reasons I heard was that she didn't even know what a lock was. And that they would have had to educate her on all this stuff, assuming that they could educate her, So, which again,
Ian and Barbara could have educated her.
Yeah, Ian and Barbara. They could have dropped her off with Ian and Barbara, picked her back up again, and voila, she's an effective companion. Just let the primitive peoples bake with Ian and Barbara.
So we've spent longer talking about Katerina than she spent in the TARDIS at this point.
I put her on D just because she's underdeveloped and just didn't really have much of a time to shine and everything. But she did travel, so there's that, and she is officially recognized. So I'm going to go ahead and put her there. If only she'd been better developed.
Because I feel like it would. I think that would average out to like a mid to low D. Like, which she's the only one in D at the moment, so she's a high D now. But if anyone else ends up in there, we'd probably put them ahead of her. So moving on from Katerina, we have Sarah Kingdom.
Nope, you're skipping him again.
Well, I forget the character's name to be.
Brett Vion. Poor Nicholas Courtney, completely forgotten.
Brett Vion I have in doesn't count because I keep forgetting that he's even supposed to, like, having not seen Daleks' Master Plan, I know that Nicholas Courtney plays a character in it. I thought he was a villain in it. So I didn't know that he was even allied with the Doctor enough to potentially maybe count. But he's in one story while it's very long. I put both him and Sarah Kingdom in doesn't count because to me personally, they don't. They are only in one story. Even if they travel in the TARDIS, for me, that's not enough to count. The story's 12 episodes, but I just not. It doesn't count for me.
Yeah, so I put him in here to prove a point. but I agree with you. So I'll make both arguments here. So Sarah Kingdom is often on official lists, counting as a companion. So Brett Vine, I think, is like the half brother or step brother, or he's somehow related to Sarah Kingdom. He's in the same number of episodes as her. He just has, he just happens to be a man instead of a woman, and you know how Doctor Who is. And then, I mean, he starts off, I think, as like a non-villainous antagonist. Like, I think he works for like Earth Security Forces and is like, "What are you doing here?" sort of thing. But then he starts working with the Doctor against the Daleks. I think Sarah Kingdom might follow the same arc, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the argument for including them is basically like that their story was as long as any 2 or 3 other stories combined. And that that's also why some people advocate for splitting the Daleks Master Plan into 3 serials. But yeah, so all of that is why there are arguments for either of them being on the list. But just like for all the reasons you just said, I would put them both and don't count. I just think it's not reasonable to put Sarah on the list without putting Brett.
Yeah. Like, Katarina at least was in technically 2 stories and traveled in the TARDIS between.
Even though she was in fewer episodes than either Brett or Sarah, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So wait, did Brett die as well?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure everyone
Lots
in
of
that
people
story ends
die.
up dead.
That is not a happy story.
I have seen Dalek Master Plan, and I don't remember most of it. I remember enjoying it though.
Most of
Really
it was missing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of it. Like pretty much the Vicky era, the Steven era, and most of the rest of the Black and White companions. There's so many missing stories.
Yeah, my
and
point.
Fewer now than there were when we started the podcast. Thankfully,
my point is that we have Katarina who died, we have Sarah Kingdom who died, but no one mentions the third companion that died, Brett Vian. It's always like Adric, Katarina, and Sarah Kingdom. They're the 3 companions who actually die, but no one mentions Brett.
And the only one the show really acknowledges is Adric.
Yeah.
I do think it's possible that if we never got the Brigadier, that people might talk about Brett a little bit more. Like, people don't feel like he died because he showed up in a different outfit in a few episodes, a few seasons later.
Oh, that's right, because he, geez.
But he had a different personality as well,
I can't believe I didn't realize that. I remember it being mentioned long time ago again when we went through Dalek Master
Plan.
We
reviewed Dalek Master Plan,
yeah, I remember that. Now I remember. Oh yeah, okay.
Yep.
Jeez. So I have him in doesn't count.
Both of them are just him.
Just him, because I remember more of Sarah Kingdom than I do of him. Honestly, and I don't remember much of Dalek Master Plan, despite having actually enjoyed watching it. Yeah, so I guess that's just me. Where do we want to put him?
So he definitely.
We all 3 said doesn't count.
Doesn't count. Okay.
Yeah.
So for Sarah Kingdom, we have 2 doesn't count and 1 whatever you rated her.
Sarah Kingdom for me is a D again. Well, actually. No, I'll keep her as a D, because like she was on the TARDIS and she just didn't, again, like Katarina, she just didn't have enough time to fully develop. I wish that she had stayed longer, because she could have had she was the hard-nosed security officer, doubted the Doctor, and then was actually kind of a villainess at the beginning, because she was trying to get revenge for the death of her brother, I believe. And then
Who was Brett?
And then manages to, redeem herself, but then dies in the end. I wish that they hadn't killed her and that she could have had more adventures and further developed. So that's a real shame. So 2 doesn't count and 1 D. So is that going to be an F?
Yep.
F. Or Sarah.
So moving on from that, we go to Dodo Chaplet. And fuck the haters, I put her in a C. Like that, a lot of people would put her much lower.
Yeah.
I do not understand the hate. She's only around for 5 stories, and yet she is one of the most hated companions I've ever heard of. And I don't get it. Like, she in there, like again, is she any? Do I think she'd be worthy of moving up higher than a C if I saw like all of her stories? Probably not. But I don't get the hate. She is just kind of there. I don't have strong feelings of her one way or the other. Like
So I don't know if I would necessarily represent the haters because I can't feel strongly enough of her to call myself a hater. But the way I see it, one, I can't remember a single personality trait of her, which moves her from C to D. Two, she's in bad stories, so she's poorly remembered, but that doesn't reflect on who she is. It's just that might explain why people don't have positive things to say. And then C, I have no other arguments because that's how long she's in the show. So D.
I also put her in a D again, just like Sarah Kingdom and Katarina. She felt underdeveloped, but more everyday man-ish. She wasn't hyper intelligent by any means, but she didn't come off as particularly stupid to me. Like I watched her story, The Ark. Yeah, the with the aliens with the eyeballs in their lips or whatever. So
You know, I wonder
their
if that's
mouths.
an instance of her name influencing how people remember her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So
you think, oh, it's Dodo. Obviously, she's the dumb one, right? That's what the writers are trying to tell us. But I couldn't remember enough to tell you if she was dumb one way or another. So
I
Yeah.
just watched it and I didn't think that she was especially stupid. She made average Joe mistakes. Her worst mistake in that serial was that she came aboard another ecosystem with a cold and infected everything. So, I
Yeah.
mean, she did wipe out most of a species, most of 2 species, and almost all the planets that were, almost all of the animals and plants taken from Earth. So, I guess there's that. I don't know
oh,
how.
I guess she's a high D, relatively high
Yeah.
D
Yeah, so
Relatively
she
high
compared to
yeah,
our
D.
so
other D.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
she's
she's
ahead of
above
Sarah.
Katarina.
Yeah, she's above Katarina. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, there we go.
So from that, where's my thing? We move to Ben and Polly, who because they are there together the entire time. I feel like they kind of have to be ranked simultaneously. And it's funny because I originally had them lower, and then I thought about it, and I'm like, why did I put them there? And I have since moved them up to both being in A.
Oh.
Because I genuinely enjoy them. I love the War Machines as a story, and they are part of the reason that I enjoy it so much. Michael Craze has some amazing acting in that. Like being afraid of one of the War Machines, it's like it's fantastic. They're also the first companions to be present for a regeneration. So there's that kind of historical thing that you can take into account. You can ignore it if you want, but they do kind of get shafted a bit when Jamie comes in because he's more popular than them, but at the same time, I think they're worthy enough to be an A.
Okay, not a take I necessarily expected. Although I guess in defense of my rating, it sounds like you're basically saying that their best writing was before they became companions. So I have them in D tier just because, kind of like Dodo. Like, I mean, I could probably describe their personalities more than I could Dodo's, but like, I don't have any interest in them. I feel like they don't excite me when they're in an episode the way most companions would. They're just kind of, they're present. I've watched Power of the Daleks like 4 times, and they definitely are there. But like, I just don't have anything. You know, they don't have they seem to be lacking either the charisma or the writing or something that the other companions have, and they don't appeal to me. And I wish I had like a better thought out thing to say, especially following what you wrote, what you said. But yeah, that's it for me. Is I have them in D tier.
So Aaron?
I have them in C tier. So, kind of a lower C, I guess, but mostly the only thing I watched them in, I believe, was Power of the Daleks. So that's kind of my opinion, is that they're there. They're kind of the hip new companions. And they're kind of the attractive people. Is when Doctor Who got into that.
Mm.
So, and younger and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, there's not much for me to say about them. They're there.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say that would probably average out. We've got an A, a C, and a D. I guess we can just say that as maybe being above Steven in C.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Any particular order, or just like Polly and then Ben, or Ben and Polly, or
They're effectively tied, so it
okay.
doesn't really matter which.
Yeah, Polly is probably a more pleasant person, but I don't know if that makes her a better companion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I enjoy Polly more than Ben, but I think that's kind of intentional.
Yeah,
And like,
Ben.
you kind of need them to play off of each other.
Ben is a little bit more harsh when they're talking
Like
to like
Ben is the
natives
one.
and
Like,
stuff.
is this guy even the doctor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like,
And he is supposed to be.
Alex wouldn't be it without him, so I can't say he's worse than Polly.
Yeah, it's like in their case it's a thing of like he's he's a working class sailor and she's supposed to be more of a sort of swinging 60s woman kind of a thing. So
I didn't know she
in
was a
any
swinger.
case but in any case, moving on from that, we move on to the second Doctor's companions. The second Doctor's first unique companion was Jamie McCrimmon, played by Fraser Hines, who debuted in The Highlanders. After the exit of Ben and Polly, Jamie and the Doctor were joined by Victoria Waterfield, played by Deborah Waitling, in The Evil of the Daleks, with Victoria staying on for 7 stories before exiting in Fury from the Deep. After that came the debut of Zoe Herriot, played by Wendy Padbury, in The Wheel in Space, with both Zoe and Jamie staying on until Patrick Troughton's exit as the second Doctor in his final story, and his final story of both the 60s and black and white era of the show, The War Games. Jamie ending at a whopping 20 stories total. Literally the only second Doctor story he was not in was The Power of the Daleks, and the relative newcomer Zoe ending at a total of 8 stories.
Is that counting Jamie's 2 comebacks?
That's purely like his exit as a primary companion. I think if you counted the others, he would be above 20. But I think I stopped counting at the War Games. So we have, funnily enough, with all that one paragraph blurb, we have 3 companions to get through in this section. Because we already did Ben and Polly. So first we've got Jamie S. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
I mean, it stands to reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is one of my favorite companions, and no real shock that he has plenty of good moments when he was there for Trout almost the entirety of Troughton's run. And it was purely by accident. He was meant to be written out. They all liked him. He was already friends with Patrick Troughton, so they rewrote the Highlanders to keep him on. Ben and Polly kind of got shafted by that because suddenly they had less lines, and that's why they exit. But yeah, I love Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie is one of my 3S. He has great development, great chemistry with all of the other, like with maybe not Ben and Polly so much, but the Doctor, Victoria, Zoe, like great written chemistry, great on-screen chemistry. Like you see him evolve from someone who thinks a car is, an alien monster to like, when I said like it was overselling Steven to say that he was the mentor companion. Jamie very much is the mentor companion when Zoe comes aboard. Even when Victoria comes aboard a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's definitely S for me.
Mm.
Yes,
Aaron?
he is. Jamie is actually my top tier S. The top of the cream of the crop, the top of the top. He's got the physicality of a lot of the male companions. He's also even though he's from the 1700s, he adapts to technology quickly. So he's able to he's able to fire a laser gun just as well as he can a musket or something like that. He's able to. I don't know if he ever actually flew the TARDIS or anything. I We have any info on that. I think this may have been an era where the companions didn't really touch the TARDIS controls or anything, but
And whether or not humans can fly the TARDIS kind of changes depending on who's writing the episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, given he was there for the almost entirety of Troughton's run, I think it might have been that like the Doctor would be like, "Here, press this, this, and this," or something maybe. But I think that might have been about it.
Just as
I'll say you had just enough of a pause at the start. I was waiting for you to be like D because we need content.
I can't I almost I can't believe I'm saying this, but I almost forgot he existed, and then I went through and watched some of the older serials and stuff. I'm like, oh shit, I almost forgot about Jamie. So yeah, his adaptability, his charisma, just the way that he clicks with both the Doctor and Victoria. He adds a little bit of romance because it's kind of insinuated that maybe he and Victoria may have been interested in each other, at least in some of the books and stuff that I've read too. So, or
they
some kind of
in
supplementary material or
yeah
something.
in Victoria's exit, they have a bit of a moment where it's clear their mutual feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what do you call it? So yeah, he's like he's got everything going for the show. So, and it's no wonder why he was in so many stories. So yes, farthest right S for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll bring him up to S. All right, next.
Yep. So next is Victoria Waterfield, and you know what? Like she, as much as she is labeled as the, she's the sort of progenitor to what Mel kind of is to everyone of just like she's there to scream. I mean, her last story basically takes advantage of that to defeat the villains. But I don't know. Having seen pretty much all except maybe one stories that she's been in, I will say maybe this is purely the strength of her exit talking, but I do have her as like a mid B. But she has one of the best exits in classic, full stop for me. So that was enough to bring her up from like I might have otherwise had her at C, but her exit is so strong that I've bumped her up to like a mid-level B.
I have her in a B as well. I think I'm not necessarily convinced that she's written better than the C's, but at minimum, like her acting and her chemistry with Jamie is probably enough to bump it up. Even if the acting is, there are there are definitely a few moments with solid writing, but yeah, I have her in a B.
Okay. I have her on a slightly lower B, just kind of behind Vicky. Mostly because I've seen more of Vicky than I have of Victoria. I did watch was it was it The Web of the Deep or something like that? God, My brain.
Fury from the Deep is her exit. She was also in the Web of Fear.
Web of Fear. I just watched her in Web of Fear, so they do have the telesnap version of that on BritBox. So um, and I do like her as a companion. She is of course one of the scream queens of the series, but she's also more demure.
Mm.
She's more kind of ladylike and kind of the damsel in distress type, but like she's also, she's not dumb or anything like that. She has instincts, and she also has a lot of poignant stories with her father. She meets her father again, which is kind of weird because like here she is still young, and here he's just like this old man, and she even has a sister who's like an adult now, like a full grown adult. So yeah, that was, I thought that was pretty cool. So I put her on a slightly lower B. If only I could have seen more of her stuff. So
So that would we all three gave her a B, so I'm trying to think if that would technically put her above Vicky.
maybe above
No,
Vicky.
wait, Vicky was a B plus. She was like, I
Yeah,
think
B
she was like,
plus.
Oh, right, yeah.
wasn't
So
she
it'd
like
be
wasn't she like
yeah,
ABB or
yeah,
something?
right, yeah. She was ABB, so yeah, she'd be between Vicky and the original
Okay.
Or yeah, like or
three.
equal to the original because they were kind of like an average.
Hmm.
Okay.
So the final of the second Doctor section is Zoe Harriet, who now the bulk of this opinion probably is coming off the fact that I've seen the War Games a billion times, but I love Zoe. She's an A for me. Like, she's very self-assured. Like, she kind of falls into the trap that Doctor Who has with not letting smart women be like effective most of the time. They're just there to, oh no, wait, she's the woman, she has to scream and get captured and crap like that. But she still stands up for herself. I love her dynamic with Jamie, especially because there you have a past future dynamic with the companions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a
Possibly
bit of
the
sass.
only time,
I think so.
unless you count. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about Big Finish whatsoever, so that wouldn't
Yeah.
count.
um yeah, I of the stories I've seen her in, and the first one I saw was ironically her final. I love Zoe, so yeah, she's an A for me. That's it, Bill.
Oh, so it's me. So yeah, so Zoe definitely is a companion type that I really like. I also her character is great. I've already talked a lot about the chemistry in this era. Um, for what you said about smart characters, this is one of the times where they clearly let a character, let the companion be right and the doctor be wrong, which it's hard. I mean, it's hard to do when you're trying to write characters as a foil to a character that's supposed to be brilliant, but I think it might have been easier because she was acting alongside the clown, so it was a little easier to write him as making a dumb mistake and her as being right. But yeah, love Zoe. I have her. She's not one of my 3 S's, but she's solidly in the A tier.
Aaron?
I like Zoe too, but I have her in one of the kind of a mid B in that again I haven't seen a ton of her stuff. But I have seen The Wheel in Space, and I did watch the War Games. And I do enjoy, like you said, she's self assured, she's intelligent. Um and that's what I enjoy about her. So she's definitely very different from Victoria and definitely from Polly. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about her is that I like her. So where do
So 2 A's and a B, that would put her in A, and basically if anyone gets A's across the board, they'll go above her. Or
okay.
like an S and an A, they'll go above her. So moving on from that to the third Doctor companions, which this blurb is longer than I expected it would be, but mainly because of how I break things up, despite the fact he doesn't
Especially since
technically
the
have a
first
lot.
two characters were introduced in the black and white era.
Yeah. And like the way I wrote this out is it's kind of scattered. So anyway, starting with the third Doctor's opening story, Spearhead from Space, we both introduce Liz Shaw, played by Caroline John, and reintroduce Brigadier Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart, played by Nicholas Courtney, the latter of which having previously debuted in the Second Doctor era, appearing in The Web of Fear as a colonel and The Invasion as a full brigadier, before becoming a recurring character during the Pertwee era, making on and off appearances beyond that through until Classic Who's final season, exiting the show in the Seventh Doctor story Battlefield. Liz Shaw was in the entirety of season 7 of the show before being unceremoniously written out in favor of Jo Grant, played by Katie Manning, who debuted in Terror of the Autons, which was also the Master's debut story. Jo Grant would stick around until the end of season 10 with her 15th and final story being The Green Death. Season 11's first story, The Time Warrior, saw the debut of Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elizabeth Sladen, who would be the first major companion after Ben and Polly to be present for a regeneration as she stuck through into the Fourth Doctor era, finally leaving the classic era after 18 stories within that era in the Hand of Fear. The Third Doctor era also introduced the Unit family dynamic, which consisted of the Brigadier, Sergeant John Benton, played by John Levine, and Captain Mike Yates, played by Richard Franklin. With Benton having previously appeared in the Second Doctor story The Invasion as a corporal, before reappearing in The Ambassadors of Death, and made regular appearances in the Pertwee era, in total appearing in 15 stories, not counting The Invasion, before exiting the show without warning after his appearance in the Fourth Doctor story, The Android Invasion. Captain Yates, specifically, debuted in Terror of the Autons alongside Jo, and appeared in 9 stories before exiting in Planet of the Spiders, also briefly making a cameo on The Five Doctors later on, which might have just been archive footage. I don't know. I haven't actually seen The Five Doctors yet. So going back to the start there, first we have Liz Shaw. This is more of a thing of I love Liz, but by virtue of only being in 4 stories, even though 3 of them are 7 episodes each, they don't really do a lot with her, so I've just got her as a high B. I wish I could have her higher, but by virtue of only being in 1 season of television, she doesn't really develop all that much. Bill?
Oh, wait, so you said you're doing Liz first?
Yeah.
Okay. So Liz, I have her as an A, and yeah, a lot of that's unrealized potential. But she very much she holds her own with the Doctor. She makes a significant difference in the story she's in, and that I think is an important part of the companion. If you could just take them out of the story, and the same thing happens, or if you could just replace them with I don't know Mickey, and the same stuff happens, and that's probably not the mark of a great companion. Liz definitely makes a difference on the story she's in. It has to be her. I guess they took her out because they were running out of ways to write that kind of story, but that's an A for me.
Yeah, like from what I can recall, they wrote her out because they were like, oh, damn it, we just had a smart companion, now we've got another one. And also, seemingly, from what I can recall from behind the scenes stuff, Caroline John was actually pregnant after they finished filming, and was basically going to be asking to leave. But before she could ask to leave, they said that they weren't bringing her back. So,
Okay, I have her as kind of a high B. Again, I enjoyed her as kind of a more mature, intelligent companion, going from Susan to Zoe to Liz. So that was I'm trying to think of like the differences between them all, and I think Liz is definitely kind of the mature 70s woman, who does she does stand up to the doctor for a lot of stuff. I remember her questioning
Mm.
a lot of his ideas and everything. So be a
Mm.
very intelligent scientist, while not being from the future or anything. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Like for as ultimately little as they do with her, it is nice that she both stands up to herself to both the Doctor and does not take any shit from the Brigadier or unit.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's funny. Now that you mention her not being from the future, she's really her own archetype in that she's
Mm.
not the future girl like Susan, Vicky, and Zoe.
mm-hmm.
She's not Ian and Steven. She's just something kind of in between.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And she's also not, she's not. I mean, I don't know where you would place Barbara and Polly in that, but she's distinct from them as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's of her own time, but also uh intelligent and in a very specific kind of has a dry wit to her,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
which is fairly unique for that period in the show.
She kind of reminds me of almost like Dana Scully a little bit. She's like kind of
Yeah.
no. She's kind of no nonsense. I mean, other than having red hair
Mm.
as well.
I think she does do a little scullying, right? Doesn't she do a little bit of the forcing the doctor to prove that something's alien?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
uh,
So a B for her
uh,
or an A or
yes, seemingly it was two B's and an A, so that would put her on par with Vicky.
okay. So kind of to the left or the right of her.
Um, I'd say either or.
Okay.
Either way, they're kind of tied.
All right.
This is why I
Uh,
don't rank my tier lists. I put them in the tier, and then everyone in the
yeah.
tier is equal.
So moving from that, we go to Joe Grant, also known as Joe Jones, after the marriage. Uh, S for me. Like I love Joe. She is legitimately as surprising as this might be to some. I rank her above Jamie. It's close, but having seen every story that Joe is in, I love her. I love her dynamic with 3. I hate that Russell thinks that it's fucking romantic. It's not. It's to me it's always come off as more platonic and paternal more than romantic. I've never understood that reading of these two. Um yeah, I absolutely love the dynamic. She starts off as a ditzy blonde, but she definitely grows over time. In some cases very quickly. And proves that she is not just a ditzy blonde. Showing more like she grows as a person throughout her time on the show. Um, and yeah, I absolutely love Joe, and yeah, she's S for me easily.
So I
Uh,
think my main reason I don't have Joe in S is because if I did, then the next 2 female companions would also have to be an S. And then my S tier would just be less exclusive than I want it to be. I wanted the S tier to just be, A plus plus, and then the A pluses get lumped in with the A's.
mm,
If I sorted out my A tier, then she probably would be in like A plus. But as it is, she's an A. She if she had one more season, I think she would definitely be an S. As it is, she's strongly an A.
mm,
I have her as kind of a low A myself. I felt that she brought a lot of energy, a lot of great, positive energy, I should say, to the companion role. Whereas I often tend to forget that Liz exists. Joe is a little bit harder to forget. She really leaves her mark on everything and really kind of, I don't know. She's one of the more memorable companions in my opinion. So very much of the time again,
mm,
um, with the whole hippie thing that she winds up getting into. So
I
mm,
should also note A is my most populated tier.
Mhm.
So I definitely was afraid to start making S
Yeah.
just as populated.
All right.
Mm.
So is she an A then,
So
or
Yeah,
that's
she'd
S?
be a
two A's
high
and an
A.
S. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So she'd
And
be
Oh, sorry.
above
Yeah, that's.
Zoe.
above
I
Zoe.
forgot.
Okay.
I don't need to make these decisions.
uh, um. So we will.
We're
I think
still
we'll leave
skipping all the
I think.
men.
Well, I think we'll leave the unit 3 till last. So we'll do. Uh, because like, I mean, they're gonna have to be done. To me, they're gonna have to be done individually, even though you could easily
Oh yeah, no, they
lump
all have
2
distinct
of them in.
personalities and
Yeah.
distinct roles.
Yeah.
Like yeah, I mean Benton and the Brigadier are around for the same amount of time, but they're not the
Yeah.
same character.
Yeah. So we will do Sarah Jane Smith first, who
Oh, so we're
I
on to the
mean,
fourth Doctor.
yeah. Like I basically just lumped her in here because she had a full
Mhm.
season with 3. Um there are some where I will wait until the Doctor they're most associated with 2, but in this case I figured she gets a full season with 3,
Oh,
so
you're not going to do Nissa with the
we'll leave
fourth Doctor?
it.
Actually, Tegan would have
um
been better to say than Nissa, but
but in any case, yes, Sarah Jane Smith, easy S for me, personally. I haven't seen everything in Classic from her, but I've definitely seen enough that I'm like, I mean, yeah. The only reason I would bump it down to an A at all is just how kind of shafted she gets by like the constant uh mind control crap
mm,
that keeps happening. But you know, that's not on her. Elizabeth Sladen is still a solid actress, and we have she may be one of the more unique companions in terms of being a journalist. So her wanting to snoop around and all that just kind of comes with the territory. Um and all that. So sometimes you'd be, why is a companion sneaking in to do this? But with her it's like, well, she's an investigative journalist. It kind of makes sense. um and it's like it's an interesting job to go with. I'm kind of not surprised that they haven't done a journalist since, but it would be interesting to see something like that again.
mhm.
But yeah, she's I put her on the lower end of S, I think, and probably just because she kind of gets shafted in some of the writing she gets later. But yeah, she definitely has a solid start.
So along with that, yeah, if she, I kind of feel like after the fourth Doctor came around, that she was written as being a less interesting, less unique character. She was still a solid companion, but I don't think her writing stayed at the same level all 3 years. And again, we're ignoring K9 and Company. We're ignoring everything she did when she was
Yeah.
no longer a companion.
Mm.
So because of that, because she doesn't seem to have grown, if anything, she seems to have dropped off as time went on. That keeps her an A tier for me.
That's
She's
fair.
still at the A tier level,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's keeping her out of us.
Mm.
Okay. I have her as a low S myself. She was pretty iconic for me. I've seen so many of her stories are like real they're iconic companion and iconic stories. Yeah, like I had to have her in S, so
Mm.
so where are we
Uh,
putting her?
so so that would be in S behind Jamie.
Okay.
So now we can get around to the 3 unit folks. So starting with the Brigadier, you know, I'm almost kind of second guessing myself as to where I put him. Um, because I think I'm mostly focused on third Doctor era Brigadier, who to me is absolutely S tier, but I'm thinking, is he brought down by his appearances later? Because this is technically counting him across
So I
the
would say
entirety
if
of the show
I would
from
say
this point onwards.
if Sarah Jane's not brought up by the things that she does after leaving the TARDIS, the Brigadier shouldn't be brought down by what happens after he leaves the TARDIS, is my take.
Right. So yeah, to that end, then yeah, I have him as a low S. Because like I primarily, especially if we're counting when he was a regular companion, I love his dynamic with Pertwee. They do kind of lose it as time goes on, when they allow the Doctor to start traveling again, but it never fully goes away within the Third Doctor era. It's only after that that he starts appearing more sparingly. So yeah, low S for me.
Alistair is my second S. He is one of the few people who interacts with the Doctor as an equal from day one to day 1,000,000. He's funny. He's not in lockstep with the Doctor, but he's not fully antagonistic to the Doctor either. He's his own character. He's a character the Doctor can refer to as a friend and never as an assistant. And it's, he definitely changes the dynamic of the show. Solid S tier for me.
Mid S tier for me. He's so big in the universe of Doctor Who that he has a legacy. His child is running unit right now. He's got and of course I know we're not really looking at supplementary materials, but he does have his own storybook line and everything. Cookie Jar Books did a series of books for his character. Yeah, like again, an iconic companion and someone that if you're especially watching that era of Doctor Who or growing up with that era of Doctor Who, you're going to recognize him instantly. And he's kind of the stern father figure too, kind of the backbone of the show along with the Doctor. So yeah, mid tier S.
So that would put him, I would say either like basically in front of Sarah Jane, like
Yeah,
between
because she was
Sarah
two
Jane
S's
and
and an
Jamie.
A.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Jamie was all high S's, so yeah. So Sergeant Benton, I have as
Warrant Officer Benson as of his final appearance.
I have him as an A.
Did I just
Again,
say
this
Benson?
is
Yeah. Benson?
Benton's.
Benton,
I'm
yeah.
correcting his rank and then fucking up his name.
Yep.
I don't know which is worse.
We're actually on regular show. This is Benson.
But yeah, I have Benton as an A. I like his dynamic with the Doctor and the Brig because he's kind of that midpoint of he's much more willing to go along with the Doctor unless the Brigadier is like, imposing his will upon Benton effectively. And his interactions with Joe are great. His interactions with Sarah, few though they are from what I can recall, are quite fun. But yeah, as like he's easily the second most iconic member of Unit. But at the same time, not quite enough to push him up to S. So yeah, he's an A for me.
I'm looking at the 70s and I'm realizing that there's definitely every single one of these companions except for maybe Harry and even Adric, I think. There's thousands of people that consider each of them their favorites for quite a while up until we hit Chameleon, which drops to 0. But yeah, That said, yeah, Benton, I don't think he cracks the ceiling to get into A tier for me. He's funny, he's reliable, he's a follower. Um, and I think that puts him along with the companions I've listed for B tier, but does not bring him up to that A level.
I have him as a kind of lowish, middle-ish B. Just above Zoe and just behind Liz. Yeah, I don't really remember much about him other than that he's kind of the Brigadier's right-hand man, and I kind of enjoyed watching him be kind of the little foot soldier for a unit for a while. Oh.
So I'd say that would put him between Liz and Victoria.
I think he's also the most promoted character, military character in the show, because both he and the Brigadier get a promotion between the second and third Doctor eras. And then he gets another promotion by the fourth Doctor era, which the Brigadier does not get. And Yates, I think he gets he gets promoted from lieutenant to captain at some point.
And then gets relieved of his duties for the events of Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Yep.
Speaking of which, Captain Mike Yates. Interestingly enough, he's the only member of unit where if we're marking them individually, I personally list him as not counting as a companion. Because to me, he does not appear enough, and he's always just kind of there. He's just another unit guy. And
funny enough, unlike three of the people we've already talked about, he has canonically traveled in the TARDIS. But they don't mention it until the Sixth Doctor era.
But yeah, like, I mean, he's just in this weird nebulous space where, if anything, I've basically put him in doesn't count because I couldn't think of where else to put him, because I've never personally, having seen pretty much all of the Third Doctor era, I've never thought of him in terms of a companion, whereas I always do for Benton and the Brig. He just feels like he's definitely a part of the unit family, but for whatever reason, I never picture him in companion terms. It might be because he has like the fewest appearances as well of the like primary unit cast. But yeah, I don't know. This is basically
of the ones with
entirely up to
names
you,
anyway.
Yeah.
So for me, he starts off as kind of a Steven, right? Kind of a C. He's kind of there, but he's not like super developed or interesting. And then Invasion of the Dinosaurs happens, and he moves to the F tier. And I think he has fans out there that would say this is harsh. I would say that's where I'm leaving him as F tier.
Let me see. Yeah, I remember I always get kind of an unsettled feeling from Captain Yates. Like at first I kind of like him because he's kind of a more spirited version of Sergeant Benton, who's like he's just kind of joking around with Joe and all that, and it's kind of fun. And then, but there's something, like I said, unsettling with him. He's a little bit more violent, I think. And I can't remember what happens in Invasion of the Dinosaurs that gets him dismissed, but I think that's, I think that kind of makes sense for me. So I have him in upper.
He's part of the conspiracy that's behind the whole episode.
Oh.
That's the main thing I remember.
Okay.
Yeah,
like he's a member of the cult. He's not like a leader, but he's like a member of the cult.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because like,
and then he gets dismissed and becomes like a monk somewhere or something.
Yeah, like I put him. Apparently, my C, D, and F tiers are, or my C and D tiers are all my tragic tiers. it's all the characters with all this trauma and weirdness going on with them. So I have him just above Susan and behind Turlo and C.
So let's see. A C, an F, and it doesn't count. So that would probably.
D? A
I
low D?
think so. Yeah, I'd say a low D.
Low D, low.
Lower than Katarina or higher than Katarina?
Lower than
I'd say
Katarina.
lower. Yeah.
A D
So.
minus minus.
So moving on from that.
Yes, this quick.
Uh, so moving on from that, we go to the fourth Doctor companions, at least the unique ones, of which there won't be too many, because some of them will be left until the next section. The first unique fourth Doctor companion was Harry Sullivan, played by Ian Marter, who debuted alongside the fourth Doctor and Robot, and appeared in 7 stories total over the span of his run, leaving before Sarah Jane did. While his final regular companion appearance was Terror of the Zygons, his final appearance in the show fully was the android invasion. After that came Leela, played by Louise Jameson, who debuted in The Face of Evil and appeared in 9 stories before leaving in the story The Invasion of Time. Leela's run also saw the debut of K9 in the story The Invisible Enemy, who continued into the debut and exit of both versions of Romana and beyond. Romana Varatralunda, I finally got it right, herself, and in her original incarnation, played by Mary Tam, debuted in the Rebus Operation, staying throughout the entire Key to Time storyline, a season-long storyline comprised of 6 serials, before exiting in the Armageddon Factor. Romana randomly decided to regenerate in Destiny of the Daleks to explain the actor switch, with Romana II being played by Lala Ward, who stuck around for 10 stories, 11 if you count Shada finally being finished, before leaving in Warrior's Gate alongside K9, the final story in the E-Space trilogy. Speaking of which, the E-Space trilogy saw the debut of Adric, played by Matthew Waterhouse, in Full Circle. After the departure of K9 and Romana II, Adric and the Doctor were shortly joined after by Nissa of Traken, who debuted in Keeper of Traken, and Tigger Javanka. That being said, Adric, Nissa, and Tegan all stuck around to the 5th Doctor era, and as the 5th Doctor has bugger all unique companions, these three are much more associated with him. I'm going to hold off going any further into those 3 until we get to the 5th Doctor stuff. So that gives us, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 companions in this section to get through. So starting with Harry Sullivan, I've seen Jack all of him, but I also don't have strong feelings one way or the other. So while some might put him in like F, I've got him in D. Haven't really got much to say about him. He is like he is kind of shafted by the fact that he was a companion introduced with the idea of a being the action man to a much older Doctor, but then they cast Tom Baker, so well, he kind of got shafted.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, by the way Harry's talked about, sometimes you would think he belongs in F. I think he's just more of a, like, if you took him out of the story, nothing would change pretty much the entire time. And that puts him in a D tier for me.
I put him in B tier because God bless Harry Sullivan. He's just the golden retriever of the series. Just not a thought in his head, but he's just so fun to watch. As he tries to figure shit out.
He's also either a massive troll or a misogynist, and sometimes it's hard to tell which.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoy watching him interact with Sarah because she's just so much more competent. than him, but then he also, he's not a bad person. He's just,
Mm,
he's just in over his head, which kind
mm,
of I found to be kind of endearing. I mean, I don't remember the more problematic parts of him, but I don't doubt that they're there. I think he was also kind of hyper protective of Sarah Jane, if I remember correctly. Like, didn't think that she was capable of taking care of herself. She had obviously
mm,
showed that she could. So, yep. But otherwise, kind of a middle-ish B for me.
mm. And I'm also realizing I I forget about Harry Sullivan so easily that I forgot that he's technically Dr. Harry Sullivan.
hmm
I'm pretty sure. So in any case, that
He was,
with
but he was unit attached, so I think his
right.
his rank should be more prominent. But I
Mm,
can't remember his rank, but I definitely remember he was a
yeah.
doctor.
Isn't it Lieutenant Harry
Um.
Sullivan?
Probably.
Mm,
He would probably
so,
use his rank more often if it was anything else.
so with two D's and a B, I'd say that would probably make him a low C. So beneath Steven.
Okay, let's see here. So beneath Steven. There we go. I'm
So
trying to
from
find his actual rank here, and Wikipedia just lists him as Doctor, Surgeon Lieutenant of the Royal Navy.
there you go.
That's it.
Gotcha.
There we go.
So moving on from that, we get to Leela. Now
Leela of the
this is
17.
yeah, Leela the 17. This is probably gonna piss some people off, but I'm not going to put her in S, even though I otherwise would because I fucking love Leela. But I'm putting her in A, and part of that is just how
She's a
fucking
wannabe
shafted
Jamie.
she is. Yeah, like she gets so shafted in her run. Like she has such an interesting start, and then they write her out by marrying her off. Well, technically not marrying her off, but pairing her up with some random dude that she'd maybe talked with once. And like in Talons of Wen Chiang, she's made to look incompetent. Like that story's bad enough with all the racism in that. But then on top of that, you have Leela looking ineffective to where she can't fight some people off, and the doctor has to come in and save her ass. Like, like it's stories
Oh,
like the
was that the
Sun.
one when she was in the tight Victorian dress that prevented her from moving?
I
Or
think
was that
so,
Fang
but I feel
Rock?
like she.
I think that was Talons of Wang Chang.
Yeah, I think that was Talons.
Because she was having issues
But
moving through the sewer, too, I believe.
like I think I'm pretty sure she discards that dress during the story. Um, but yeah, like from what I can remember seeing behind the scenes stuff, they wanted to do like an what they refer to as an Eliza Doolittle thing with her, where it's sort of a what's the actual story that's from? But like generally My Fair Lady, I think, where it's like they take this like more low class lady and turn her into a high class lady, kind of a thing. So there was supposed to be a arc for her that just kind of never happens. Um, and I just take issue with the fact that they didn't kill her off. And because that, like, if you're going to have her leave the TARDIS, that makes the most sense. That either she would leave the TARDIS to, like, lead people, or that she would leave the TARDIS because she
I
died
like how
trying to save the
the
Doctor.
number one person of they should leave the TARDIS of their own free will is like, why didn't you kill her off?
Well, again, she's one of those, and seemingly Louise Jameson was preferring the idea of them just having her die. But I guess they just decided, no, we're gonna do a really like a really bad version of what we did with Joe Grant. Like with Joe Grant leaving to
And
be with
Susan.
someone, yeah, like Joe leaving to be with someone made sense. It did not make sense with Leela.
So
Bill?
if we were including Big Finish, Leela would be S plus plus. But she is the. I mentioned before that there were three female companions in a row, not including the male companions, that would all have to go into S tier if I allowed any of them to go into A tier. I mean, into S. So I kept them all in A tier, and Leela is the third of those three. So A tier for Leela.
S tier for me, because as a little girl growing up, it was pretty awesome to see a woman wielding a knife on Doctor Who for once. And just, putting the screws to a bunch of the villains and everything. Yeah,
Literally, in her case.
they make her pull her punches, and yeah, they marry her off. Although I didn't realize they married her off until much later when I started rewatching Doctor Who. Just before I was on the podcast, I would also kind of watch it in my free time and that, and then I actually watched that. So,
Yep.
And that is kind of a shit way to go for her. So, but otherwise, it was awesome seeing her on the screen and really very impactful. So, yeah, as for me.
So with 2 A's and an S, that would put her on par with Joe in the A's. So she can either be in front of Joe or after, but just generally before Zoe. So the interesting bit is that now we've got well, actually no, I guess for some reason I was about to move on to Roman, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, K9 technically comes first because he showed up during Leela's run. Yep. So with K9,
and I kind of combined Marks 1 and 2 into one single companion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, K9 incarnations are never really distinct enough to separate out,
even though they would tell you that they are.
Yeah. Much as I like K9, I basically put him as a high B. Mainly because as fun as he can be written sometimes, like having now seen the Reboss Operation and Armageddon Factor, there are some very funny K9 lines in both of those. But I'm just like, he is still treated more as a MacGuffin than a like a Chekhov's gun, more than a character in some cases. So B is the highest I feel like I can really go with him. Bill?
Yeah, he's another one of those characters where like he's fun to have around. He serves a role, but he doesn't quite break into being an A. I forget if there's any on-screen stories with just the Doctor and K9, but he's not, when it's just the Doctor and K9, it's pretty clear like he's not an adequate foil for the Doctor. He's in many ways not, even the show named after him, he needed like 5 companions. So yeah, he's B.
I actually kind of grew up watching him as a kid, so this might be painting him with nostalgia, but I actually put him as an S. I put him as a high S. Like right behind Jamie, yes. And I understand that there's some janginess with the robotics for him and everything, but as a kid, I wanted to watch the show with the funny robot dog. And that, like the live action show. It was just something that I hadn't seen before. I thought it was just the coolest thing. And I really enjoyed watching them. So it's
You
again
can say the same thing about the Daleks, but that doesn't make them good companions.
but like it's just an iconic character that when I think of Doctor Who, I think of K9. So at least from my childhood. So was it high B or low A, low B?
I'd say that'd be like either a low or mid A.
Yeah.
I'd say.
I'll put him on the low side of A.
Mm-hmm. Then next up we have Ramanad God, now I fuck up on it because I'm not looking at because I have it like hyphenated to remind myself where the specific break is. Ramanad Viratralunda, because I used to the DV is what always threw me off, and then
Which
hearing
isn't
Mary
really a
Tam's
sound in English.
yeah, which
I mean,
I
it exists,
realized
but we don't really treat it as a distinct
yeah
sound.
yeah like hearing Mary Tam say the name, she's very clean saying Ramanad Viratralunda. So it's like, okay, that's where the split is. So yeah, Mary Tam's incarnation of Romana the First. I have her. We could technically cover these at the same time, even though they're technically somewhat distinct.
Their characters are very
Um,
different, and their fans are very
yeah.
different, I think.
Mm. But yeah, with the Mary Tam incarnation, I meant to watch all of the Key to Time, but did not end up having the time to do that, so I watched her first and last appearance. I honestly really enjoy her. I put her in A. Just like that again, dry wit, very like not taking any shit from the Doctor, but also very like I like it's a matter of sometimes it's a bit okay, come on, how can someone this smart be making decisions this silly? But also they're playing off the idea that she doesn't really have any real world experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of it's definitely the difference between the Doctor having more street smarts and Romana, both versions of Romana having more book smarts. And like I actually really enjoyed their dynamic, especially her getting the Doctor very flustered, like a lot. And her just like not taking any shit at all from him. Um, but yeah, like I definitely enjoyed her. So yeah, I've got her an A.
So the funny thing is, even though I just said they should probably be discussed separately, I have both Romanas right next to each other. Again, their personalities are completely different. I mean, they're the same person, but yeah, you go very much from the person who's basically, this high class, well educated, arguably schoolgirl who, that's her whole dynamic with the Doctor of being the character who got better grades but knows nothing about what's going on and somehow always has a personal stylist with her, to Romana 2, who is in some ways basically Romana trying to become the Doctor. Both are charismatic in their own different ways, and yeah, to save me from having to go over that in a longer form for both of them, I just say they're both B.
I treated them separately. I like the classy kind of ladylike attitude of Romana 1, so I put her in a high B. And then Romana 2 was pretty unique in that, I like Bill said, it felt like she was almost a female clone of the Doctor. So it was kind of weird, but also kind of cool because you had it felt like she was on the same tier as the Doctor, like kind of like, well, different from the Brigadier. So they were like almost two sides of the same coin. It was strange but kind of cool feeling. And it wasn't until later, like I knew as a kid that Lala Ward had married Tom Baker. My parents had told me about that, so I think that also might be affecting things a little bit with seeing them as the same kind of person joined. But yeah.
And I guess just for the sake of since you two both gave yours for
Sorry.
Romana 2 as well, I'll also throw in that I put both Romanas in A. For me personally, so was that 2 B's and an A?
I put Romana 1 in B and Romana 2 in A.
Okay, so that's 2 B's and an A for Romana 1, and then 2 A's and a B for Romana the second. So effectively, that would put Romana the first in somewhere in probably the higher B's thereabouts. And Romana the second in like possibly the lower A.
Do you want her ahead of
Lower to
K9?
mid. Yeah, probably ahead of K9.
Okay. What about ahead of Zoe?
Probably more she's on par with Zoe, I'd say.
Okay.
And because we were going to cover the next 3 in the Fifth Doctor section, we'll get to that. So, as mentioned, Adric stuck around into the Fifth Doctor era before finally exiting after 11 stories, being killed off in Earthshock, the first companion to die since the 60s. Nyssa and Tegan were then eventually joined by Vizsla Turlough, played by Mark Strickson, who debuted in Mordrin Undead, the first story of the Black Guardian trilogy, in which we learned Turlough was originally meant to kill the Doctor but manages to resist that programming. During the Black Guardian trilogy, we lose Nyssa as she leaves the TARDIS in Terminus after 11 or 12 stories, depending on whether you count Keeper of Traken or Legopolis as the start of her tenure. And after what was basically a fake-out exit in Time Flight, Tegan eventually properly left the TARDIS after 19 stories total in Resurrection of the Daleks. Turlough stuck around until Planet of Fire, leaving in 10 stories. And Planet of Fire also saw the debut of Perry Brown, played by Nicola Bryant, who we'll talk about next because, goddammit, the Sixth Doctor needs to have someone to talk about. And also Chameleon existed, was a robot, was voice played by Gerald Flood in King's Demons and Planet of Fire, the latter which Chameleon died in, and there was much rejoicing. So from that, we will go back up to Adric, who I have as a high C. I don't entirely get the hatred for him, but at the same time, he can be annoying. It's just the level of annoying some people put him on par with. It's like people who hate, like, Jar Jar Binks. I get the, like, people who hate him for the racist connotations for Jar Jar Binks, but otherwise, Jar Jar Binks doesn't really bother me all that much. It's very much that of, like, Adric. I don't like love him, but I also don't absolutely despise him either. So it kind of evens out to him being a high C, especially because he has a very memorable exit.
So Adric falls into the category of companions that, at least for a time, were used against the Doctor, of landing into D tier. He's also, I mean, he's not, he's not removable or forgettable, but yeah, he's a bit whiny and a bit arrogant. But I would probably put him on C, if not for Castrovalva, in which he's a companion to the Master, even unwittingly. And we're not talking necessarily about their morals here, right? We're talking about them as a companion. So he winds up in D tier as a companion for me.
So for me, Adric, it was like one of my first crushes as a little girl, so I've got him in middle A tier. But I also don't really get the hate from him. I know he's kind of the annoying little brother archetype, but I think he also had kind of an interesting. I think it's in Black Orchid where he like dances with Nyssa, and he's had some interactions with Nyssa. So I think there could have been like some kind of
I didn't
like
think there was anything interesting in Black Orchid. No, I'm playing.
Yeah, I think he could have had a love interest with Nissa, kind of similar to Jamie and Victoria a little bit. So,
I think she was twice his age. If I'm maybe
possibly.
uh, I think she was teenager, but she was like late teens, whereas he was like early teens,
Hmm.
if that. I think he was like 12 or 13.
okay. Like I don't
Really?
know if there's such a
Whereas,
thing as flight attendant school. Like I just got the idea she was like mid-20s.
oh, Tegan's in her 20s, I would assume, but I
Yeah,
think
Nissa
Oh
was a
wait,
Nissa is
wait.
like,
Oh,
teenager.
never mind. You
Ni-
said
Yeah,
Nissa.
yeah,
Nissa was a
yeah,
Sorry,
teenager.
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, Nissa.
Nissa's
Nissa's
like,
a teenager. Yeah. Never. Okay.
Mhm.
yeah.
So I guess I just I probably heard you, and then my
Mm.
brain just flipped what you said to something you didn't say.
Mhm. Yeah. And also his exit was
Thankfully,
just
I already voted.
crazy. Yeah. His exit was just crazy, and it kind of broke my heart as a little girl. I was so sad. But yeah, and to
And
this
what
day, I
broke my
still.
heart was pretending that a gold badge and gold dust have the same effect on a respirator.
Well, and then they brought like his shade back to kind of like taunt Nissa and Tegan, I believe. And they still kind of keep mentioning him. So I hope that one day, kind of like with Susan, they do kind of find a way to bring him back, or maybe Big Finish can do more specials with him. They have actually,
Mm.
so they have
Yeah.
brought Matthew back for more stuff. So, but yeah,
Mm.
like I actually really enjoyed his character. So yeah, mid A for me.
So with a C, a D, and an A, I would say that probably falls in the C somewhere. Not sure if it would be mid or
Is he
possibly
better than
mid to
Color?
high. Mm, I'd say above Steven, so I'd say mid C.
Okay, there we go.
Next we move on to Nissa of Traken. She's another one of those ones where like she's kind of like Susan in the sense of like she's a smart companion, she sticks up for herself, but also is half the time there to either be a damsel or in one case, in Kinder, she's just kind of not appearing in this film because we wrote this with two companions in mind, so someone had to be shuffled out for a bit. um, so like there are like she kind of has the curse of being best written by the person who came up with her. And then in a lot of
And
other
she wasn't
stories,
written to be a companion either in that story.
right,
So
right. But like from what I can recall, I remember realizing that the stories I like her in the most were either fully written or at least possibly had some sort of uh work done on it maybe by the person who created her originally. So it's kind of annoying that that's the case. But even then, I still put her in the B category because I still really like Nissa, and the dynamic she has with Tegan especially is very fun because she's supposed to be more like very upper class alien dealing with this like fairly working class Australian woman is very funny. Um, and also the dynamic she has with both Force briefly, Five mostly, and Adric is also interesting. So Bill.
I would say Nissa could be an A if she had more presence. Unfortunately,
Mm.
she was written as the smart, meek one in a TARDIS with the arrogant, smart kid and the loudmouthed, every person, which
Mm.
didn't really leave her a lot of space to exist in. There's one
Mm.
or two episodes where she kind of asserts herself, namely her departure. So all of that kind of keeps her from being there enough to be in the A tier. But I really like this type of character. I enjoy when she does assert herself. So she ends up in the B tier for me.
Yeah, like I definitely remember enjoying her in Arc of Infinity, where she's basically telling off the Time Lords.
For me, she's high A. Again, one of those female characters that really appealed to me. I found her on rewatches. I found her to be kind of a cross between Susan and Victoria, or maybe Zoe and Victoria. So she is kind of meek and more debutante type, but is not afraid to like speak her mind. And is also intelligent, but she's also willing to make sacrifices, like having to destroy the source and losing her father to the master, and like the tragedy of continually pursuing the master in hopes of freeing her father and everything. So I felt that kind of really built her character up a bit. So and that's why I enjoyed about her. So high for me.
Mm-hmm. So with two B's and an A, I'd say she could probably go in between Vicky and Liz Shaw. So moving from her to Tegan Javanko, which people are going to be like, oh, of course you put her there. You're Australian. But no, I just genuinely love Tegan. She is my favorite Fifth Doctor companion. She just has so much going on. She has what is one of my favorite classic Who stories ever is Kinder, and that revolves around her. So she is S for me. Like that is definitely where it comes into personal opinion affecting things, because I guarantee you I'm probably one of the rare few who would probably put her this high. But yeah, I love her. She's so like she's like her attitude for the companions that she's saddled with, which sounds mean, but like for the companions that she shares the TARDIS with, her having such a loud personality and being very working class when she's stuck with this, child prodigy and, this upper class lady and a doctor who ends up the doctor she spends the majority of her time with, given that she debuted in the final story of the Fourth Doctor. She has like a funny thing is she kind of overshadows the doctor she's with by having so much personality, whereas Peter Davison's doctor is kind of very bland. I mean, ironically, I'd say most of his personality seems to shine when interacting with her because she is so argumentative with him that it gets a rise out of him. So he actually shows some personality by telling her to shut up. Whereas, like, otherwise, he's usually just kind of there for me as far as the Fifth Doctor goes. So yeah, I absolutely love Tegan. S tier for me. I put her like in sort of mid to low S, but still.
So Tegan, yeah, I feel like she kind of starts off as a B tier companion, and then her arc is pretty much she's introduced, she gets traumatized, she joins the TARDIS, she gets traumatized, she gets traumatized, she gets traumatized, she gets traumatized, she leaves the TARDIS. So there's no room for growth because every time she thinks she might grow, it gets beaten out of her. I mean, she does go through a little bit of an evolution, like when she stops from being non-consensually on the TARDIS and becomes consensually on the TARDIS. But that's really the most growth that she's given room for, so she never gets a chance to expand into the A tier. So B tier for me.
She's C tier for me, but a high C, along with all the other tragic figures. Um, but I actually didn't like Tegan very much. I thought that she kind of scared me as a kid. because she was just so loud and like so. She always seemed so angry. I'm like, why is she so mad? And like her stories were kind of spooky. Like Kidna, I didn't really understand as a kid because the concepts behind her are very complicated in that. So my mom would watch it and I'd have no idea what the hell was going on. I'm like, what is this? What is going on? They're so trippy and stuff. I'd probably appreciate them a lot more if I just took the time to rewatch them. I have seen some of them for the podcast, but yeah, yeah. I don't know. Like I found her to be harder to like than Adric or Nissa or the Fifth Doctor, especially Tom Baker or the Fourth Doctor. So, yeah, high C for me.
So an S, a B, and a C. I'd say that either puts her between Liz and Benton or between Benton and Victoria. One of the two.
We're right there.
Probably the S would put her like knock her up just above Benton, yeah. So Chameleon F. I mean, come on. He's in there for 2 stories. It's a terrible prop that no one knew how to use, and they killed him off in his second appearance. Like
Agreed.
a robot companion could have been interesting, but the
If
way
the
they went
creator
about
didn't
it,
die and therefore they had nobody who
yeah,
could control the machinery.
yeah. Honestly, me personally, I would have done what. When did Star Trek: The Next Generation start?
89, I think.
Okay, so that definitely wouldn't have been around at the time Chameleon was introduced to use as a basis, but effectively, I would have gone the Data route, where he looks, where he's an android. He appears human,
where
but
he's an
he
actor
stays
and
a
he's
robot.
not an actual
Yeah,
robot. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that could have worked better because they wouldn't have had to worry about a prop. They could have just had the actor put him in makeup to make him look slightly unsettling or something, and just go with that instead of a robot prop that the creator died so no one knew how to use it.
The question is, did Gene Roddenberry and his team watch Doctor Who and say, let's not do that?
Yeah, F for me too. I barely remember Chameleon. I think it freaked me out as a kid, and it's just it's forgettable. It's so hated, and honestly, I haven't really seen much of his stories since I started the podcast or since I got old enough to rewatch Doctor Who and actually know what was going on. So, but yeah, it's just freaky. F for me.
Yep, so that's F's across the board.
Sarah Kingdom is no longer alone.
Like poor Sarah. I almost feel like bumming her up slightly just so she's not on
She's not on par with Chameleon.
That feels cruel. But in any case, yes. The final of the section that we'll be classifying for here, just so Sixth Doctor has someone to friggin' talk about. Is Vizsla Turlo, and I have not seen. I'm realizing I've seen like enough to have an opinion, but I'm not like this could be potentially stronger one in one direction or the other if I'd seen everything he'd been in, like especially if I had actually seen the Black Guardian trilogy, that might influence
that's
my
like half
opinion
of his
one way or the other.
character.
Yeah, so based on the stories I have seen him in, which includes his exit, I've got him as like a low C. Like, I don't hate him, but he is also just post Black Guardian trilogy. He is just kind of there. Like, he's just the male companion who exists to, well, not even really do actiony stuff because we have the youngest Doctor of that era, like as the Doctor, so he's not even really necessarily needed to do the actiony stuff. He's just there to be there, really. After, like, again, after Black Guardian trilogy, he's just kind of there. So yeah, I've just got him as a low C.
Yeah, so he started on the TARDIS to kill the Doctor. He didn't kill the Doctor. That's his claim to fame, that he didn't kill the Doctor, which actually I think everyone on this board also didn't kill the Doctor. And then he proceeded to not have enough personality for me to realize how many episodes he was in. And then in the first episode that he has, where he's a solo companion, he's like, fuck this, I'm out. D-companion.
Jeez. I have him as kind of a higher C, right behind Tegan. I remember him mostly. I remember not liking him at all when I first saw him, including like the Black Guardian trilogy, where he's just going back and forth on whether or not to kill the Doctor, and it was really annoying to see that. I'm like, yeah, I didn't like him. He was a bad guy. In my book, I think he's more of a villain than anything. And the one thing that I do like him for is the line in The Five Doctors where the doctor orders him to go outside with Tegan and check out the landscape. And he's like, he buttons up his coat and as he's walking away, he's like, "Thank you." So just like in the most annoying tone ever. So that was the one funny thing I saw him do. I remember him doing. So, high C for me.
So 2 C's and a D. I'd say that probably, I'd say it probably puts him like, I'm trying to think. I think like 2 C's would put him above a low. So probably,
Between Steven and
I'd say,
Harry?
maybe between Adric and Steven.
Okay.
And now we move on to the Sixth Doctor. So Perry Brown stuck around into the Sixth Doctor era, being around for the bulk of it, short as it was, before leaving in the story Mind Warp. I'm realizing I forgot to say how many stories total she was in, but oh well. The second story in the Greater Trial of a Time Lord season arc. Perry was then replaced by Melanie Bush, played by Bonnie Langford, who just sort of sprung out of nowhere and stuck around into the Seventh Doctor era, leaving after 6 stories in Dragonfire. Now, you would be surprised that I technically put Mel here, but I decided I would take advantage of that and have a bit more of a blurb for 7. So we will actually count both Perry and Mel here before getting on to Ace.
So Perry was in 10 to 12 stories, depending how you count.
Yeah.
And if you know the Sixth Doctor era, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So I put Perry as a low C. I have not seen all that much of what she's been in. She just very much feels like she's just kind of there from what I have seen. From what I hear, like, she's definitely one of those classic era companions where if we were taking Big Finish into account and I had heard her Big Finish stuff, she would probably rank higher. Because both her and the Sixth Doctor were done a lot better by Big Finish than TV. But going by what I've got to work with, and that she was kind of had the unfortunate happenstance to be in a low point for the show. The most I can give her is a low C.
Yeah, so Perry, I think a large part of this is just the specific stories she's in and the story they're telling with the Doctor. But she's a very swappable companion. She has a personality for sure, But if you were to just take out Perry and put any companion in her place, it wouldn't really change any of the stories that she's in, which places her in the C tier for me.
Yeah.
I hated Perry growing up, and I still really don't like her. She's an F for me. Like, and then on top of that, the way that she goes out, it was so, like, for years I thought that they had actually killed her off, because I never saw, like, the end of the serial that she quote unquote dies in was so traumatizing for
Where
me.
they're just like, yeah, we saved her off screen.
Yeah, like I never
Yeah.
I never finished Trial of the Time Lord after I saw that. Like, and we even owned it on VHS tape, and I refused to watch it because I didn't want to see that scene and that with like her bald head. It's like, this body is warm. It's like, oh gross. I hate body horror like that. It's or body snatching like that. I granted I
Mm.
also grew up watching the original War of the Worlds TV series when I was a kid, which was horrifying.
Mm.
But yeah, like an F for me. I hated her voice. I thought her clothes were dumb and like over sexualized, and just yeah, I
Mm.
didn't like her. And hopefully they did, like, and she always seemed to be whining too. And
Mm.
also her relationship with the doctor also felt kind of abusive, honestly,
Yeah.
especially like when he first wakes up and everything, but also
Yeah.
later on
When
in the series he kind of treats her like she's an animal rather than a person.
Mm.
I think that's his attitude toward human persons, not
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm.
Perry. But yeah, it doesn't make for a good companion relationship.
Yeah, I
Mm.
felt it was kind of gross, and I didn't like it, so unfortunately it's an F for me.
Mm-hmm. So it's 2 C's and an F. I'd say. Hmm.
Maybe above
I
Dodo or between Dodo
yeah
and
yeah
Katerina.
yeah. I'd say above Dodo.
There we go.
So moving on to uh Melanie Bush. You know what? I had her as a um initially I was going to put her in C, but I'm actually going to be slightly nice and bump her up to a B, because to be honest, I've never gotten the hate for Melanie, for Mel.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never understood it. Like I get it. I get it. She's the screamer. She was hired for her scream. I get it. But actually having seen most of the stories now that she's been in, I think the only ones I haven't seen at this point now are the parts of Trial of a Time Lord that she's in. Those are the only 2 serials that I have not seen that she's in. Again, she's like, I really enjoy her, nice bubbly personality. Like, yes, they make her scream a lot. But I don't know, just whatever it is, I still like Mel. I mean, not enough to push her up beyond
Mm-hmm.
beyond a B. And even if the B's when I bumped her up, it's more like a mid B. But yeah, I just again one of those companions who is overhated. From what I can tell in the UK, it's just a matter of like people from the UK were just very annoyed at the fact that JNT would keep hiring people from like soap operas and that kind of like light entertainment stuff. So they were just kind of done with it, and as well as all the screaming. But yeah, just I don't know. She's like a more screamy Victoria, but I still like her.
All right.
Bill?
Yeah, so it comes down to me. I'm starting to think I should have put fewer people in D and more people in C. Just because it's like when you say I not absolutely hating the character, I pretty much agree with everyone I've put in D. I'm like they're passing, right? It's a barely passing grade. And Turlo is really the only one that I had mostly pretty much only negative things to say about compared to neutral ones. But Mel kind of falls into that D tier of she's passing. It's mostly neutral. If she didn't physically cause pain to me, she'd probably be in C. Um, Otherwise, like, she allegedly has a character, but they don't write that character. Like, she's a computer programmer who never touches a computer the entire time she's on the TARDIS. She's instead a carrot juice enthusiast, which is supposed to be funny, but it's really not. And those are the main things I have to say about her. She's kind of a swappable companion, but she also causes physical pain when I watch Time in the Rani. And that physical pain has to dock her down a bit because TV shouldn't do that to me. So D.
I have her actually as a high B because she was such a breath of fresh air compared to Perry. she was kind of the life preserver that I clung to, and yeah, her scream is painful. But like it was better than the mental trauma of seeing a brain swapped to a Perry. So yeah, like I enjoyed her bubbly attitude, and I totally forget that she's a computer programmer, but like
This almost makes me think we could do a tier list of most traumatized to least traumatized.
yeah.
Probably.
But she was like literally
Egan and Perry would be close to the top.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I enjoyed her. She was kind of my little life preserver for a while.
So 2 Bs and a D. I would say that puts her, by virtue of the fact that Ben and Polly had an A in there, I would say that puts her between Ben and Polly and Adric. Okay, so moving on to the very brief Seventh Doctor section. The Seventh Doctor's only unique companion is Ace, played by Sophie Aldred, who debuted in Mel's exit story Dragonfire, and was one of two choices for a new companion, the other being Ray, played by Sarah Griffiths, who appeared in Delta and the Bannermen, and seemingly never again because Big Finish did nothing with her for some reason. Ace would stick around until the end of the classic era, at least as far as the primary show goes, and thus leaves the show in the final regular story of the era, Survival, after having appeared in 9 stories. S for Ace. I mean, it kind of goes without saying. Like, there are, like, I think maybe 1 or 2 stories of hers that I haven't seen yet. I think it's Ghostlight and Silver Nemesis, I think, are the only 2 that I haven't seen that she's. Oh no, wait, no, there are a few more that I haven't seen. That she's in. I don't think I've seen Remembrance of the Daleks.
She's only
yet
in what, 7?
But yeah, in any case, I've seen like most of the stories she's in, and you know, it's an easy S.
Oh, she's in
She
9.
is.
Never mind.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a very easy yes. She was one of the most unique companions of the era. She is absolutely, and like her and Seven is one of the more iconic companion pairing, Doctor companion pairings. It's like she's way up there.
I agree, Ace. They pretty much, like, she's definitely the template for the modern companion. She's basically the main character of the show, with sometimes the Doctor being an antagonist more than a protagonist. When you look at it as her show. But yeah, she's enjoyable to watch. She has a growth arc. She solves problems. She both sometimes listens to the Doctor and sometimes conflicts with him. All the hallmarks of a great companion, definitely S tier.
I have her as a high A. Just because.
No.
Yeah. Just because I do like some companions better than her. But yeah, I enjoyed watching her. A lot of great energy behind her. Very proactive, of course, and yeah, she does have a lot of growth. So yeah, high A.
With two S's and an A, I'd say that still bumps her into S, but just probably behind Sarah. Well,
I think Sarah Jane also had 2 S's and an A.
yeah. So basically on par with Sarah Jane. And finally, moving into the brief-ish section on the 8th Doctor Companions. As we're not counting Big Finish companions, this section will be relatively short compared to what it otherwise could be. Dr. Grace Holloway, played by Daphne Ashbrook, is in the TV movie, notable for being the Doctor partially responsible for the 7th Doctor's regeneration via malpractice. She runs around with 8 for a while, gets hypnotized by the Master, dies, gets better, and then suddenly decides to not travel with the Doctor, thus making her only appearance in the show.
She also kisses the Doctor, causing a shitstorm of the equivalent of a Twitter storm in 1996.
Also, Chang Li, played by Yiji So, is apparently on our list, despite the fact that he purely exists to be an excuse for Seven to get shot. And then after getting him to the hospital, spends the rest of the story as a lackey to the Master, is finally convinced that this was a very bad idea right at the end, dies, gets better, and then runs off to cash in the bags of gold dust 8 gives him after everything is resolved.
We had a disagreement over whether that makes him the same as Turlo or not.
I was just thinking that he was a worse Turlo.
As he also never decides to travel with 8, and due to legal issues with him and Grace being unable to appear in Big Finish, this also marks his only appearance in Doctor Who ever. Well, the character, not the actor. Both actors mentioned have shown up in Big Finish at least once, just as other characters. Now, so this is the funny thing, because gun to my head, I would say that Dr. Grace Holloway counts, but I would probably put her in like D if I had to put her anywhere, but I have both her and Chang Li and doesn't count because this is the only story they're in. Neither of them decide to travel in the TARDIS, and while they step foot in the TARDIS never moves while they're in it that I can remember. Or if it does, it's like right at the end after their death and resurrection. So if they're technically like if like, and you know, it's very wishy-washy what you basically have to make up your own rules for what counts as a companion, because like technically Liz Shaw never steps foot in the TARDIS, I don't think, or if she does, she never travels in it.
If she does, it doesn't have it doesn't have a control column.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those, this is going to be very divisive, if like depending on who you talk to, because I would say neither of them count. But if I had to pick one that did, it would be Dr. Grace Holloway. But she's not that memorable a character, and she gets brainwashed most of the way in and then dies and then comes back. So so for me, she'd be like, if she's in there at all, she'd be a D for me.
If Doctor Who ended in 1996, then I would say, yeah, let's rank these companions, maybe like a B or a C and a D or an F or something. But looking at this holistically and looking at, for example, Cleopatra and how I would choose her to count or not count, I would say it makes the most sense for Grace to fall under does not count. Same with obviously Chang also very much does not count in that looking at it that way.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go. I always hear at least Grace counting as a companion, but I have her as a D because there's not much to her, like you said. They even try to like build a relationship between her and the Doctor, and there's no chemistry. It doesn't feel like it anyway.
Probably because of the wig. Doctor was very uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, and it's just, yeah, I don't know. And then Chang Li, I have him as an F because if he is a companion at all, he's just a worse version of Turlo. You know, he acts like he's basically a lackey for the master, and like I don't know. Like at
Yeah,
least
like
Turlo seems to fight against the Black Guardian, whereas Chang Li is just like, okay.
yeah, like Turlo is at least being brainwashed. Chang Li is just being tricked to go along with him. But like the master's playing into his greed rather than hypnotizing him, which he could do, but he doesn't. So he's just kind of willingly working with the master because the master tricked him.
Yeah.
So with a so let's see. So Grace is either an F or doesn't. Well, I'd say just Grace counts as an F because there was a D and it doesn't count, and I was like, well, if she's gonna be anywhere, it'd maybe be a D, but the doesn't count would still bump it to an F.
No, we'll add her as a buffer between her and Sarah Kingdom and Chameleon.
And and like Chang Li would be in doesn't count because
yeah, I'm okay with putting him in doesn't count because yeah.
Well, yeah, with two doesn't counts and an F, that would put him in doesn't count.
Yeah.
So briefly, going back over it, just very quickly. So in the S tier, we have Jamie McCrimmon, Alistair Gordon, Brett Lethbridge Stewart, Sarah Jane Smith, and Ace. In the A rank, we have Leela of the Sever team, Joe Grant / Jones, Zoe Harriet, Romana II, and Canine. In B, we have Romana I, Vicky, Nissa of Traken, Liz Shaw, Tegan Javanka, Sergeant Benton, Victoria Waterfield, Susan Foreman, Ian and Barbara. In C, we have Ben and Polly, Mel, Adric, Turlo, Stephen, and Harry. In D, we have Perry, Dodo, Katarina, and Mike Yates. In F, we have Sarah Kingdom, Grace Holloway, and Chameleon. And it doesn't count. I've already forgotten the character's name.
Brett.
Yeah, Brett. Was it Visor or Vire?
Oh, Vion. V-Y-O-N.
Okay.
Vion, and Chang Li.
Just think of it as Bugatti Veyron.
So that is it for this tier list. And
before wrapping anything up, I also just in case any questions came up, I also was keeping track of it expanded, like with B+ and C+ and whatnot. I'm uploading that to the Discord now if you want to share it on the screen.
Also, nobody changed the title of our stream. It still says First Stories tier list.
Fair enough. I'll have to fix that when I export. But there you go. I went ahead and shared that to Discord.
Okay.
Which I actually think, viewed that way, it's kind of a very even distribution. Actually, I guess the the way that we have it with the normal one is actually a pretty good distribution as well, right? Lots of B's, fewer
Yeah.
C's, fewer A's, fewer S's and D's.
Hmm.
Yeah, I went ahead and shared my list too.
Oh wait, Oh, that's your personal. That's in
That's
there
my
now.
personal list.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I was like, why
does
does it not match what I'm seeing on Twitch? I was like, did my Twitch freeze and I'm seeing the wrong view? Okay.
Wait, did you post the one that we're seeing on Twitch? Oh, okay, I get it. All right, the A plus and all that.
It's an extended version of the same thing.
All right.
So
cool.
it's splitting them out like all of the like sub brackets.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, in any case, that all being said, that's all we have for this week. So, let us know in the comments what you think of this week's episode if you've watched. And don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far, subscribe on YouTube to get our exports every week, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. So next time, when we come back in 2 weeks, we will start a little portion at the start of this new podcast season by covering some animated recreations that we either haven't previously covered because they either weren't out yet or we just hadn't got around to it yet. With a little break for the Christmas special in there, starting with The Reign of Terror, starring William Hartnell as the Doctor, William Russell as Ian Chesterton, Jacqueline Hill as Barbara Wright, and Caroline Ford as Susan Foreman. We'll see you then.
See you then.